Dave Frishberg has been described by critics as a cross between Hoagy Carmichael, Woody Allen, and Noel Coward. This is owed to him being regarded as a consummate songwriter, an astute humorist, and an urbane sophisticate. As a songwriter, he is also associated with Cole Porter, Johnny Mercer, and Stephen Sondheim. Frishberg, however, describes himself only as a pianist who has always written songs and finally summoned up the nerve to sing them in public. Today, at 80 years of age, this now resident of Portland, Oregon, is internationally recognized as an outstanding jazz pianist and a widely recorded composer.
Definitely a brilliant accompanist, but also a brilliant pianist.
The more time you spend with David, you realize how incredibly sensitive he is, and it shows in his songs.
Things feel so easy, and it feels like it just drips off his fingers onto the piano.
He can write just funny songs, clever songs, heartfelt songs that make you almost weep.
I couldn't put him in a niche because he's created his own as far as I'm concerned.
I don't think anyone can do a comic song. His Woody songs, nobody living does anything like David Frishberg.
There's so much detail and so much care in what he does.
It's just very rare to be as deep a piano player as he is. He's so knowledgeable.
There's nothing but good that comes from spending an evening playing music with Dave.
I walked in, I sat down, I took my customary look around. I saw a fine young thing heading straight my way, and before I could think of something slick to say, she smiled and sat down and said, "Yes, you may." She was slapping the cakes on me, my friend, slapping the cakes on me, slapping the cakes on me, my friend, as any fool could plainly see. She had that feline feminine expertise. She was on her toes, I was on my knees, and she was slapping the cakes on me, my friend, slapping the cakes on me.
Peel me a grape, crush me some ice, skin me a peach, save the fuzz for my pillow, start me a smoke, talk to me nice. You gotta wine me and dine me, don't try and train me, chow mein me, best way to serve me, hors d'oeuvre me, I'm getting hungry, peel me a grape.
I was mute, I was mum, I was trying not to look too dumb. I said, "I certainly hope you won't misconstrue, but I thought we could have a little drink or two." I said, "What's your pleasure?" She said, "Guys like you." She was slapping the cakes on me, my friend, slapping the cakes on me, slapping the cakes on me, my friend, as any fool could plainly see. She grabbed my leg and gave a friendly squeeze. I said, "Hello, sweetheart." She said, "No names, please." She was slapping the cakes on me, my friend, slapping the cakes on me.
Pop me a cork, French me a fry, bring me a bowl full of bonbons, chill me some wine, keep standing by, just entertain me, champagne me, best way to cheer me, cashmere me, best way to smell me, Chanel me, I am getting hungry, peel me a grape. Well, here's how to be an agreeable chap. Love me and leave me in luxury's lap. Hop when I holler, skip when I snap. When I say do it, I'll jump to it. Send out for scotch, call me a cab, cut me a rose, make my tea with the petals, just hang around, pick up the tab, never outthink me, just mink me, polar bear rug me, don't bug me, new Thunderbird me, you heard me.
Not to tell you the truth, that's exactly what happened just the other day when this lady started slapping the cakes on me, slapping the cakes on me.
I'm getting hungry, peel me a grape.
Dave Frishberg was born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, the youngest son of Harry Frishberg, a clothing store owner, and his wife, Sarah. The Frishbergs were not a musical family, but their home did have a piano that both his brothers and sisters often played. Young Dave took to it right away.
I was a natural piano player before I even took a lesson. I was just playing the piano, and it came easily to me. It really did.
Frishberg's older brother, Mort, owned an extensive record collection that enabled Dave to familiarize himself with the big band music of the 1930s and 40s. Recognizing his youngest son's affinity for the piano, Dave's father arranged for the 11-year-old to take lessons. Dave stuck with it for a while, but had no interest in playing classical music.
I wasn't comfortable with it because it seemed to me as if she was training me to become a concert pianist, and I had no desire to do that at all. I was much more interested in the anatomy of music, and I wasn't that much interested in performing like a classical pianist. I wanted to play songs.
I'm impressed with my attorney Bernie. I'm impressed with his influential friends. He's got very big connections, so we follow his directions. Bernie knows his way around, and so we always do what Bernie recommends. I am blessed with my attorney Bernie. I'm impressed with the way he runs the store. He's got a Dodger season boxes and an office full of foxes. It's amazing all the different things your average guy might leave a lawyer for. Bernie tells me what to do. Bernie lays it on the line. Bernie says we sue, and Bernie says we sign. We sign. I admire my attorney Bernie. I admire any guy who knows his stuff. Sure, we blew a couple ventures with the counterfeit debentures, but you win a few, you lose a few, like Bernie says. You keep on hanging tough, and thanks to you, my attorney Bernie. Thanks to you, I'm considered well-to-do. Sure, I made out like a bandit, just exactly like you planned it. But like Murray, my accountant, told me yesterday, I owe it all to you. Bernie tells me what to do. Bernie lays it on the line. Bernie says we sue, and Bernie says we sign. We sign on the dotted line.
what did it was meeting kids who were interested in music like I was. I was really stimulated by that. And I loved playing in little ensembles, little bands and stuff like that. Was my biggest thrill, was to play with other musicians. Still is, I guess, to some extent. I've always loved being an ensemble player, and much more fun than being a soloist. I never even thought of making music a career, and I didn't learn to read very well in the process, so I was playing the piano by ear and continued to do that. Although I taught myself how to read finally, or execute music while reading, which is the next step. I learned it all myself. I had no formal training from any direction.
Dave had no intention of becoming a professional musician. In fact, while attending college, first briefly at Stanford University, then graduating from the University of Minnesota, he majored in journalism. At the time, he thought he might become a magazine and newspaper writer. Still, he continued to play piano and sought out others with similar musical interests.
When I got to college, I began to meet musicians who were really proficient for the first time. I became one of them. I was pretty proficient by the time I got to college. I felt very much at home playing with the professional musicians in St. Paul and Minneapolis. I could play boogie-woogie, and the first couple of years, that's all I could play, and I could play the blues. I figured out that the blues sounded the same no matter where you started it, so I learned how to play the blues in C, F, and G, those keys. And that was enough for me. That was enough. The rest of it was social life.
For a part-time job, Dave worked at a record distributor packing and shipping 78 RPM singles and albums.
These record stores used to order records like 3 of that song and 2 of that song and stuff like that. So it was picking out the 78 records, picking out the 78 albums, which were also big, great. They were, it was all 78 stuff. And I would fill the orders, and wrap it up or do what you do with it. And that's, and doing that with me were some other workers, and one of them was Jimmy Mulcrone, who was 10 years older than I was. And he was a pianist in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and he was a bebopper. He could play the bebop way, which was the Bud Powell way. That's who I tried to sound like that's what he was trying to sound like, and he was kind of my hero at the time. He said, I can't teach you about piano playing, he said, because you're pretty good, you're pretty quick, you can do that. But he says, I can teach you about music. And so I went once a week to Jimmy Mulcrone's house in northeast Minneapolis. I'd take 2 or 3 streetcars to get there. And he would teach me essentially keyboard harmony. He taught me about harmony works in piano. He told me how the different functions of the chords built on certain scales and certain keys, and I learned how to transpose music. I could play such and such in F, and I could play an A flat, and I could play, that's the way I learned.
Well, he's a terrific piano player. He's very well steeped in the bebop style, and he knows a lot of the really old songs, and by that I mean the 1930s, 40s, 20s even. And he knows how to set up a song, and he knows how to accompany just great. He plays so rhythmically and with such authority.
Take care that you've got some time to spare. You should know before you start, you're about to lose your heart on the golden sands of Zanzibar. You'd better beware. Mad romance is in the air, and you're bound to feel the urge when the breakers crash and surge on the golden sands of Zanzibar. And when you see reflected on a still black sea. You may forget about what used to be. The moon may carry you away. You may decide you want to stay. And if mad romance is your concern, you may never return from the golden sands of Zanzibar. And when you see the moon reflected on a still black sea, you may forget about what used to be. The moon may carry you away. You may decide you want to stay. So if mad romance is your concern, you may never return from the golden sands of Zanzibar. Zanzibar.
The University of Minnesota's ROTC program commissioned Dave as an Air Force officer, so once graduating, he was placed on 2 years active duty in Utah.
Well, I was in Salt Lake City, and that was a kind of a, I was a little bit upset. It wasn't as hip a place as the Twin Cities were as far as jazz musicians, but I had been in Salt Lake a couple months, and I would hang out in the nightclubs just to hear the musicians. I found a couple places where there were good jazz musicians and made friends with them, and I was getting gigs. Bands came through. Each week there'd be a different band. They'd spend 1 or 2 nights at the ballrooms, usually on the weekends, you know. So I saw Stan Kenton. I saw Woody Herman's band. They would say, hey, is there any place to jam? They'd say, you know, and I'd say, yeah, and I'd take them to where I would jam over at the Click Club down on South State Street in Salt Lake. And I'd bring in the saxophone player from Woody's band or the trumpet player from Stan Kenton's band. And later on, turns out that I ran into them again in real life, and they remember who I was from Salt Lake, including a saxophone player from Woody's band named Bob Newman. And he said, come to New York, I'll be in my band, you know, I'll give you get work right away.
At the end of his 2-year active duty commitment, Dave did go directly to New York. Once arriving, he transferred his St. Paul Musicians Union membership to the New York local. At that time, transferring members were required to complete 6 months of residency before they could work steady engagements. So while waiting to become eligible, Dave took a job writing non-commercial spot announcements at WNEW Radio.
I would write short little skits for certain things. They were essentially non-commercial, but I enjoyed writing the skits. And then this was New York, and they had real professional New York talent that would come in and and execute my skit. Hey, I'm in the big time. As soon as I got my union card, I was eligible to work 6 nights a week, and that's what I did. I began to work right away. I felt great. I never intended to keep a day job. I knew that as soon as I got that union card, I'd be in it, and I was.
Now Dave was a fully professional working musician, but having learned to play by ear, he often found himself frustrated by difficulties he had sight-reading written music.
It was obvious and it was plain to me that I've got to learn how to read, to sight read. And a step beyond that was learning how to read from chord symbols so that I didn't have to look at what the sheet music was. I looked at the chord and had my own version of how I would use it. Typical of a jazz musician.
This was the early 1960s, which for jazz musicians meant the music of the day was bebop. Dave became an active devotee.
Well, bebop was a way of tampering with songs that were already existing. This was bebop meant to me. And you turn it into a bebop tune by adjusting the harmonies mainly, changing the harmonies so that they had a jazz feeling to them. So typical if there was a G7th chord, saying like there were several ways that the beboppers would get around playing just a plain drab G7th. They were able to color the music so that it had a jazz feeling to it, and that meant put a little bit of a dissonance in there and make it a hipper sound, turn a 7th into a 9th or above the 9th, and extending the chords. I was fascinated with that kind of music. I like to be able to screw around with the music the way jazz players did.
Dave caught on with New York's music circles right away, soon working 6 nights a week.
People liked the way I played, and I was getting better because I worked hard at it. During the day, I was learning how to read, and at night I was playing. Yeah, I didn't really know unemployment as a musician. I was right away welcomed.
I remember I was playing with Dave one time. This is a long time ago at the old Brasserie Montmartre. And we were just playing duo, and one of us called a tune, and we got to the bridge, and neither of us could quite figure out what one of the chords in the bridge was. And so it went, and it was a funny moment because neither of us could put our musical hands on the right thing, and we went around again, and we got there the second time, and we couldn't quite get it, but it was a little closer. We were both sort of trying to figure it out and suggest to each other what it might be. And the third time through, he says, "I'm homing in on it," while we're playing, and then he got it.
You knock back the schnapps, you talk back to cops. You walk in the room and conversation stops. I can't take you nowhere. No, I can't take you nowhere. Rash staggy, you sag, half in the bag. One glass of beer and you're a total drag. I can't take you nowhere. No, I can't take you nowhere. I buy 3 or 4, you mooch plenty more. The check comes around and you are out the door. I can't take you nowhere. No, I can't take you nowhere. I don't want to watch you fall on your
You're
face.
loud and you're lewd, you tend towards the crude. My friends are disgusted with your attitude. I can't take you nowhere. No, I can't take you nowhere. Mumble, you moan, grumble, you groan. You call Honolulu on my telephone. Can't take you nowhere. No, I can't take you nowhere. I hear people say you won't stay away. You drop by for breakfast and you stay all day. I can't take you nowhere. No, I can't take you nowhere. That's right. Try not to get uptight. But I can't take you nowhere. 'Cause I don't know a place where you can show your face. And anyway, I'd just like to say, so sad to see you must be on your way. So have a real nice day. But I can't take you nowhere. 'Cause I don't know a place where you can show your face. And anyway, I'd still like to say, so sad to see you must be on your way. What a pity to say. So long.
So long.
For those first years in New York, Dave considered himself to be only a player. But often working as an audition pianist for singers, he came to admire the craft of songwriting. He thought, I want to do that. However, becoming a good songwriter proved to be a considerable challenge.
Songwriting never came easily to me. It's really a lot more difficult than playing the piano and being a jazz musician. And that's just, it taxed my brain, because you really have to work hard to do that. I don't know, nobody ever taught me anything about it, but I knew what was mediocre and I knew what was better, and I strived for the better.
A big inspiration was songwriter Frank Loesser. He advised Dave to stay on subject and make sure all elements in a song relate back to the title.
What I usually start with is the title. And that's what I try to make work. It gives me a focus, the title. And I keep Frank Loesser's, suggestion as every song is its own entity, and each one has its own, whether it's a character that's singing or something, it's got its own personality, and you've got to follow that and honor that throughout the making of that song.
The clever and touching songs for which Dave has become famous were not created with an eye on the marketplace. He just wanted to write quality songs.
I wasn't writing for hits, and I wasn't writing for the radio audience. By that time, I was just writing as well as I could to please myself, I guess you'd call it that. My songs became something special for me to do, and I wanted to make them as good as possible. And if nobody recorded it but me, I didn't sulk about it at all, because I expected that they would be ignored, or not ignored, I shouldn't say, but they wouldn't get any farther than my own record of it. In most cases, that was true. I don't write for the market. I never have.
David Frishberg's so famous for his funny songs, but then he has these incredibly tender songs like Our Love Rolls On that is so beautiful about what a long-term relationship really takes and what it feels like, and it's an absolute masterpiece.
The clouds hang low and the rains do fall, and everybody sings a little blues after all, but our love rolls on. The skies grow dark and the winds do blow, and counting on tomorrow is at best touch and go, but our love rolls on. Our love rolls on. You and I have a reason to try. We'll make it over the hill. We survive, and our love is alive, 'cause our love grows stronger still, and it always will. So it's rain or shine, as the fates decide. And even if some trouble comes along for the ride, still our love rolls on. Our love rolls on and on. reason to try. We'll make it over the hill. We survive, and our love is alive, 'cause our love grows stronger still, and it always will. So it's rain or shine as the fates decide. And even if some trouble comes along for the ride, still our love rolls on. Our love rolls on. We can rise above it, 'cause our love rolls on and on and on.
Dave loved New York. He loved the music scene, the players, the singers, and the work he was doing. He might have remained in the Big Apple if it were not for two friends from his WNEW days. Sam Denoff and Bill Persky had moved to Los Angeles, where they had become very successful with the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
They called me one day in New York and said, "Dave, it's Persky. Oh my God, how are you? You're a big star now." I said to them, "Well, you're coming out here. We want you to work for us. We want you to write songs for us. We're putting on a weekly show, and you're going to need a lot of music, original music, and we want you to do it." Wow, how wonderful. So I left New York as a songwriter, and oddly enough, I was a comedy writer too, because it was a comedy show, and that's what they wanted, was funny stuff. The name of the show was The Funny Side. So that was the funny side of this, the funny side of that, the funny side of food, funny side of newspapers, the funny side of movies. And I would have to write a song for every show about whatever subject that was. And they liked it when I was able to. There were 12 characters in the show. And the more characters I got singing, the better they liked it. That was a tough job to do, is to write songs for ensembles. Never had to do that in my life.
The Funny Side turned out not to be very funny, causing the show to be canceled after 8 programs. So now what? Though new to Los Angeles' music scene, Dave quickly found ample opportunity for work, both as a player and a songwriter. But then came the third and final step of his career. With a number of his own songs now in circulation, friends and associates encouraged him to sing them himself.
It never even entered my mind to sing my own songs. I mean, I didn't have that kind of guts to do that. I had to, what, me sing in front of people? Are you kidding? I just couldn't see it. But it became clear to me that unless I did sing it, they were going to sing it wrong, or not with the intended. My intentions for the song. They just, and besides, the songs were not really hit songs that I was writing, and gosh, I started singing them out of self-defense. Nobody else was going to sing them. I had to do it myself. And so that was the second part of my life now. I had left the New York jazz scene, and I'd become a kind of a nightclub entertainer all of a sudden. And when I got to LA, and my TV job was over, and there I was singing in the nightclub. And it worked, and the people responded, and what a wonderful feeling that was, to have them actually respond when I was singing and laugh and everything. So I kept doing it. I got better at it too.
Suicide number 1 was a failure. Suicide number 2 didn't score. Number 3, she got sick, but that didn't do the trick. Now this may be lucky. Number 4.
What's your plan, Mrs. Parker? From a window will you leap? Will you overdose on sedatives and just drop off to sleep? Will you yowl? Will you yell? Will you howl like holy hell?
Will you die, Mrs. Parker? Will you die?
Will you flee, Mrs. Parker, when the deadly deed is done? Will you hurry to the Hamptons for a frolic in the sun? Is this just a cruel joke? Do you really plan to croak?
Will you
Die,
die?
Mrs. Parker, will you die?
Will you hop a freighter to Nantucket and slyly take a tumble overboard?
Will you opt to kick the well-known bucket and strangle as you dangle from a cord? Will you crush aspirin tablets in a double Mickey fin? Will you open up the oven door and stick your head right in? If you blow out your brains, will you wipe up the stains? Rumors fly, Mrs. Parker, rumors fly. Will you die? Will you die? Will you die? Will you wear, Mrs. Parker, something gay to mark the day? Will it be the boots and jodhpurs or the lacy negligee? Something tailored and severe or a skirt that's up to here? Always chic, Mrs. Parker, always chic.
Will we find, Mrs. Parker, a farewell communique? Something sassy and acerbic you've been saving up to say? Will you leave us a note or a post-posthumous note? Can we peek, Mrs. Parker, can we peek?
Will you rise up sprightly in your coffin while we stand there politely at the scene?
And will you thank us for visiting so often? Or aren't you growing rather tired of this routine? Well,
Let us know, Mrs. Parker, ring a gong and say the word. Your obituary's ready, publication is deferred. So before you turn to go, we would really like to know, will this be your ultimate goodbye?
You're looking worse, Mrs. Parker.
Just the curse, Mrs. Parker?
Will you die?
Will you die? Will you die? Are you in bed, Mrs. Parker?
Are you dead, Mrs. Parker? Will
Will
you
you
die?
Will you die? Will you die?
Mrs. Parker, will you die? Mrs. Parker, will you die?
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's...
At that time, another good friend, Bob Dorough, was creating a new television series called Schoolhouse Rock. Because they had collaborated in the past, Dorough asked Dave to come on board.
Well, my friend and collaborator, Bob Dorough, lived on the East Coast. He lived in Pennsylvania near New York City, and we became very close friends. And we even wrote together. We wrote I'm Hip together and a couple of other things. And so he was a big influence on me in many ways. And it was through him that I began to write for Schoolhouse Rock. He was one of the inventors of Schoolhouse Rock. And he wrote, I'd say, 75% of all the material that you would hear. But what he couldn't handle, he'd farm out. And one of the people he'd farm out to was me. So I wrote about maybe a half a dozen songs for that show. And if I mention that will be my credential to fame, was that, hey, he wrote, I'm Just a Bill.
But how I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill, now you're a law.
Oh, yes!
I wrote a musical called Quality Time, and showed it to a few producers. My own songs, and I didn't want to have to write a bunch of new songs. So what I did was I took my own songs and made them into a show called Quality Time. And I wrote I think I may have written 2 or 3 songs especially for that, but most of them were songs that I already had written. It's a lot easier than writing new ones. And it was picked up by the Milwaukee Repertory Company, and they had it was put on their schedule, and I went there and rehearsed with them. It was so much fun to rehearse with actors and singers. I just loved it, and they were doing my material. I always kind of wanted to have that happen. It didn't happen in New York. It didn't happen in LA. It happened in Milwaukee, of all places.
Oh, Eloise, won't you humor me, please? And tell me we still should try. 'Cause you know, Eloise, I sure hate to say goodbye. You're free, Eloise, to do just as you please. And I'd never presume to pry. You know me, Eloise. I sure hate to say goodbye. I still see the evergreens we planted one sunny season not so long ago. I guess I took the evergreens for granted, but seasons pass and people grow, and now I know, Eloise, even evergreen trees have to wither one day and die. Even so, Eloise, just the thought of it makes me cry. And oh, Eloise, I sure hate to say goodbye.
I'm beginning to understand from reading his comments about Frank Loesser and the things he learned from Loesser that Dave has a really highly developed sense of knowing when to pause and knowing when to slow down the delivery of a lyric in order to keep the listener engaged. He's a master at that, and I've never heard anyone sing one of his songs better than Dave.
I still see the evergreens we planted one sunny season not so long ago. I guess I took the evergreens for granted, but seasons pass and people grow, and now I know, Eloise, even evergreen trees have to wither one day and die. I tell you, Eloise, just the thought of it makes me cry. And oh, Eloise, I sure hate to say goodbye.
In California, Dave's career continued to expand. His albums were nominated for 4 Grammys, and artists such as Tony Bennett, Rosemary Clooney, Mel Torme, and Bette Midler were recording his songs. He was appearing on The Tonight Show and on public television's Prairie Home Companion. Now having 2 sons, Dave no longer felt comfortable living in frenetic Los Angeles. So in 1986, the teeming year of the LA Olympics, he moved permanently to a more serene Portland, Oregon.
The main work I do now as a pianist is playing for Becky Kilgore, who happens to be the best singer I was ever associated with, and that includes Carmen McRae and Sue Rainey and the others. And I get a terrific amount of satisfaction working with her. And I have a few jazz friends here in Portland too, that every once in a while get a gig, and I do that, but mainly I'm an accompanist. And that's what I find out that I really enjoy the most about playing the piano, is accompanying, which is kind of odd, because a lot of piano players will think that's something you gotta do and it's a drag. But I always found it really enjoyable to play for singers. I thought that was great. And to play behind jazz artists too. I enjoy accompanying, comping they call it in jazz. I enjoy that work better than I do solo work.
A little taste might hit the spot. A little taste might help a lot. It may be nice and maybe not. In my condition, this is a risky proposition. A little taste might pave the way. It has been known to save the day. A little taste might be okay. It's a sedation, good for a sticky situation. Why not spare myself a little pain? It wouldn't hurt. And why lock my appetite out in the rain without a shirt? Who said self-denial's all that great? It wasn't me, 'cause I found it often pays to dissipate. One little taste could make a whole lot of difference. Maybe it would ease the bite. It never ends. And one taste could help me make it through the night. Good evening, friends. Why let good intentions get my goat and bring me down when I know a great potential antidote? One little taste could change my whole disposition. A little taste might break the ice and make the nasty seem like nice. One little taste just once or twice, it's an enhancer. One little taste could be the answer. And so it shouldn't be a total waste. Waiter, I think I'll have a little taste. Put it on his tab. Thank you.
Moving gracefully through a satisfying musical life, first as a boogie-woogie man, then as a bebopper, Dave went on to become an accompanist, a songwriter, a TV comedy writer, and finally, an entertainer performing his own material. Continuing today as a musician leisurely working in Portland, his accomplishments and versatility have earned the respect of every musician in town.
He's really kind of an unusual amalgam, because he's got stride, he's got like old-time blues, and he's got bebop, and then he's got like all of the, the swing era up into the 50s piano stylists, vocal accompanists, all of that stuff, you know, he's an orchestrator and a soloist and an entire band and himself on the bandstand. And you know, that's not what people think of. They think of him as the songwriter and the performer. The musicians will remember him as a musician, and the public will remember him for his great songs.
When you're still, do you hear one small voice crystal clear saying, listen here, my friend, listen here? Well, that voice is your own, and it speaks to you alone. You can count on me, it says, so listen here. This is you, this is real, this is truly the way you feel. You can run and you can hide, oh, but sometime, someplace, we each of us winds up face to face with that little voice inside.
This is you, this is real, this is truly the way you feel. You can run, you can hide, oh, but sometimes, someplace, we each of us winds up face to face with that little voice inside. So we hope and we yearn and we live and sometimes learn from that little voice that whispers crystal clear. And we each hear the call, 'cause it's calling to us all. Follow me, it says, never fear. Listen here, old friend. Listen here, dummy. Listen here.
Thank you.
So when all is said and done, for what does Dave Frishberg want to be remembered?
Quality. I think the quality of what I do is I guess that's what's most important to me. I think that's what I'd like people to remember about my songs, that they were of a certain quality and above a certain quality. So, and I never wanted to be thought of as a songwriter for the market, because I don't have a high regard for the music that I hear on the radio. Cleverly and passionately as it is performed, it's something that just doesn't speak to me, and I haven't paid any attention to it. I don't think I've been influenced at all by any composers after 1945, 50. I'm still listening, and I'm still listening to that stuff. That's my favorite stuff is from the 30s and 40s, pop music, American pop music. That was a lot of wonderful people writing songs then, songs that I can identify with. I want to be known as an adult songwriter. How's that? That's how I'd like to be remembered. I'd like to remember as an adult who wrote quality songs.
I want to be a side man just an ordinary sideman. I go along for the ride, man, responsibility free. I want to fill behind the vocal, the double on flute, and jam on the blues. I want to go and join the local, buy a dark suit and start paying dues. I want to maintain my book in neatly numbered order. I want to listen to Lester Young on my recorder. I want to play while the people dance. I want to press my own coat and pants. I want to ask for an advance. I want to be a sideman. I want to work for a superstar. I want to hang in the hotel bar. I want to be young. I want to have fun. I want to be a sideman.